Why ketamine?
Ketamine's legal.
So is that just because that is our natural state? So when you are not in survival mode, that's where you go?
So you become aware
Yeah.
of all of that that's going on.
Possessive, it's mind, judgmental, and those are the thoughts that are coming forward. And that's all we're focusing on. You get the essence of who we are without that being an influence.
I thought at one point that you put me on a chair that was vibrating.
Right?
Or that I was like, I mean, my spine was very kundalini. It was just like,
Yes.
I was going like this. And then when I came out of it, I was like, were you like concerned at all when I was doing that?
You're probably one of the most still people I've ever met. Like, it's like no movement.
Truly, what we're witnessing as the observer is you experiencing activations electrically with light and information. You are now tapping into the field of infinite consciousness.
Ever since I wrote my goals down with the pen, my dreams and reality have both been blending in. I just hope that in the end, my dad don't extend me.
I guess I should introduce for people to know how I even discovered or even got into ketamine. I had done it a few years before on the recommendation from Deepak Chopra to work with his person, and I did. And it was fine, but I didn't really care for it. And I was like, oh, that's something I'll never do again. And then I saw Dr. Jason, and you were like, hey, have you ever thought of ketamine? You know, like a lot of people are talking about it right now. There's so many benefits. We're researching it. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, I really don't want to do that again. And you described to me how it's so different, that it metabolizes differently when you do it as an IV, right? And then so I finally did it, and now I get it. So do you guys want to tell me a little bit about, first, and I know we're jumping right into it, but I like to do that, is why ketamine, if somebody's been hearing this over and over, and then I'll get into more of your stories and how you connected and all that.
Yeah.
You want a Rochambeau?
Yeah.
Ketamine's legal. So that becomes the first piece, right? I mean, when I talk about psychedelics, people ask me often, why did you choose ketamine? It's like, well, it's legal. So that's one of the primary reasons, right?
Is it fully legal? Like anybody on the street can just do it?
No, it's legal in the sense that in the medical aspect, it's not something like where cannabis being legalized, you can go just purchase it on your own. So it still has to be medically supervised or at least prescribed. But amongst all of the psychedelics, psilocybin is, contingent based off of location and state and different regulations. Ketamine across the board has been something commonly used for over 50 years. And so it has familiarity, and it also has wide range acceptance amongst the medical community.
And it's used how? Let's talk about that.
So, yeah, it's been used in the hospital system for decades. In the ER, when people come in with traumas or like dislocated arms or shoulders, or something like that, they use ketamine because it's quick on, quick off, really good for kids. And they could reduce the injury and get them out.
And maybe it helps you like disassociate a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
So
if you had that injury.
In the high doses, it's more like an anesthetic, right? So we use it in the operating room a lot too. And then Christy can speak to the first responder aspect of using ketamine.
Yes.
Oh, so let me actually first say, so Christy, your background is as a first responder.
Yeah.
And Dr. Jason Sharna has been on the show before in season 1 as a cardiac.
We're vascular surgeon.
Vascular, right? Okay, a vascular surgeon.
Like a plumber.
Okay. Just get all the things out.
That's right.
Totally.
But you're still operating to this day. So this is not like you're not only working with ketamine, you still operate.
Right.
Yeah.
So I do mostly regenerative functional medicine with ketamine, and I do some operating still.
Right. Got it. Okay. And then Christy, do you want to talk about how it's in that setting?
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's where ketamine found me. It entered our drug box. And so I've been a first responder for almost 25 years. And I've seen ketamine in just different forms, ER to be one of them, and then flight medicine. But as a professor, where I really ended that part of my career, ketamine entered our drug box. And so we utilized it for acute and chronic pain, but also things like sickle cell or cancer, abdominal pain. It was just a multi-versatile tool that gave you another option outside of fentanyl.
Wow.
Yeah.
So for people maybe like, actually I was talking to Trey, like as we got here, and he said, he's like, yeah, now there's like places called in LA, massive like ketamine center and things like that.
Yeah.
So people are probably like seeing it, but unaware of what it is, or they have the connotation of like the K-holes that parties and raves and all that.
Right.
So maybe we can walk somebody through the experience like how I did it, where I'm laying there, I have these like music, binaural kind of beats playing in my ears, fully blindfolded. So I'm going inward, and it's used more therapeutically that way, right? So like for me, and I know that, I think it was you, Christy, who said in the third one or fourth, like you really drop in.
Yeah.
And I noticed that. It was like the first two are beautiful, but the third one, just like right in and to a deeper place, right? So I can talk about my experience, but what are some of the things that you're hearing from people?
Well, the commonality is oneness and love as an overall feeling or way of being.
But why is that? Because it's like it's not a psychedelic like ayahuasca or psilocybin where there's a spirit,
Right.
because it's like an organic thing. So it's not an organic thing. So is that just because that is our natural state? So when you are not in survival mode, that's where you go? I want to thank you for watching, but also please don't forget to subscribe, because we're noticing in the analytics that some people are watching multiple videos but haven't subscribed yet, and it really helps me to continue to improve the show. One of those improvements is that this season I'm only having one sponsor for the entire season instead of 5. And it's LEELA Quantum Technology. So they are the official sponsors of the Quite Frankly podcast. And I'm so excited because if you have followed me for a while, you know how much I love this technology. They have multiple third-party double-blind studies to show how this affects your health in a really positive way. But also the way I use it is I write my intentions on a piece of paper like this, and I put it in there, and it's now in the quantum field. So more about that in a bit, and thank you for watching.
Well, it deduces the animal brain. So that's one of our, I don't want to say it's a design flaw, but it sure as shit seems like it. The limbic system is the animal brain. And so therefore we're perceiving the environment still through the lens of a really archaic time when we had dinosaurs to worry about and other predators. Yes. And so we're moving so quickly through space and time that we're truly perceiving the environment very quickly. And then we're programmed for hurry and worry, speed and aggression. So we're constantly in this state of hypervigilance, hyperdiligence, and fight or flight. So when you reduce that, or that reptilian and animalistic brain, you get the essence of who we are without that being an influence.
One really big thing that I noticed is how overstimulated I was.
Yeah.
Or maybe we all are still.
Yeah.
Right? It's almost like I only could notice it when I was taken out of it. Then I was like, God, I'm so overstimulated all the time.
Well, it creates that awareness of that. So you become aware of all of that that's going on, and then able to separate that out and become, like Christy and I always talk about, the observer to what's going on in your own psyche, your head, and everything else.
I like that you kind of talk about it as medicine too, right? I've always heard you say like, and as very shamanic, like we'll always like talk about Aya as the medicine.
Right.
Oh, well, the medicine says blah, blah.
Yeah.
You do that as well with ketamine. Did that just happen naturally, or did as you started to work with it?
All of the above. The more I transcend personally and the more I evolve consciously, the more it became clear it is truly medicine. And just to touch on one of the things you said, ayahuasca and psilocybin, that's DMT.
Right.
And so it truly is waking up our latency. We have a latent dimethyltryptamine system that exists inside of all of us. And so how do you wake that up, right? And when ayahuasca comes in, it's more of the gut is what it's pulling up, which is why that can be, it's different for everyone. But there's a lot of, yeah, for sure. But you can even see some of that nausea come up with ketamine in the sense of the serotonic region and the gut-brain axis. So as we start to populate new ways of thinking, being, doing, happiness starts to make its way into new opportunities. You can see that it starts off-gassing or leaching into the gut, which then people will experience nausea. And if ayahuasca taught me anything, it's that we should really embrace vomiting. In the medical community, we literally are taught to do the exact opposite of that.
Oh, like how? Like,
well, you don't want to.
Treat the nausea?
Oh, yeah. We always treat it. Yes. Oh, yeah. And now I'm complete opposite. I encourage it.
Well, I mean, it is encouraging, right? If you have to vomit, there's a reason.
and you feel better after. Like I
Yeah.
haven't thrown up in years, but I remember, I mean, now like I am on this high dose ozone therapy, which I was telling you guys right before. And last night I woke up in the middle of the night hoping that I was like, God, just throw up. Like I want to get this out, whatever this is that's trying to get out, because I'm very clearly detoxing. You know, I feel good now, but the last 2 days, I mean, I was having all the signs of a detox. And so I wanted to just vomit and get that out, you know?
Yeah. Sure. I created a whole protocol around nausea. And at least briefing people on the permissions, right? I mean, like, and the holistic side of it. Ginger's great, but why not truly embody the nausea and just allow it to come up and out so you're done with it, rather than the suppression, because then it's just now festering even more. And that's energy. It's just trapped inside of the gut.
What is the difference? So when we first met about this and you were like convincing me, you know, to do it, it was the lozenge that I did and didn't enjoy. Why does it metabolize different? And then also not just with IV, but intramuscular, which a friend told me that they did it that way recently too.
Yeah, so with the lozenges, you're getting more of a first pass effect, so it goes to the liver, and it's really hard on the liver, number one.
Is it?
So, yeah, if you do too much of it, it can be really hard on the liver. So the metabolism is completely different. So you're actually missing out on that direct access to the central nervous system where it really needs to be working.
Right. That makes sense.
So, and then the absorption rate and all that's very variable when you're doing it not IV. So we have a very strict protocol on how we are able to do it IV. It's very consistent. And so that's how you can get the therapeutic effect pretty consistently over time. And so that steady state dose that you can get into the IV system is where all the research has been shown to be effective of how ketamine actually works and has beneficial effects. So that's why it's important. So the absorption in the muscle can be very variable. The absorption orally can be very variable. So it's a lot different.
What are some of the cases? I mean, you've seen, I guess like what I always hear is depression, right? Depression. I didn't go in for that, but for somebody who's having, like, they're really in it, like, why would that be a good option?
For depression, you mean, or just overall?
Anxiety, something like that.
For sure. Well, it comes into your mind movie, right? And so again, that animal brain comes in. And so if you have anxiety, you've literally memorized the way that it feels, even down to where you can time panic attacks for some, right? Like at 5 o'clock, this happens. Well, the body's memorized it, and then you fired it and wired it. And so now you have this rehearsal, this memorization, and this program and pattern that you're just replaying. We can show that we have 70,000 thoughts a day, and that's average on minimum. 60,000 are from the day before.
Most of them are negative.
Yes, and we're just laying the same thing on top of itself.
93% of our thoughts are negative.
Really?
Yes.
For the average person.
For the average person. No.
Right, I was like,
Statistically speaking, 93% of humans' thoughts are negative.
and that's the default mode network. You can show when that thing kicks on that it's 1,000 words a minute of negative self-talk. That's the animal brain, right? That's ego. It's ego.
But see, this is why I feel like, because medicines are really helpful, like ayahuasca.
For sure.
So many times, psilocybin so many times, ketamine so many times. I noticed the benefit, but nothing has, like, I can't notice anything more than deep yoga or meditation. Like, it always goes back to that. And like, even states of DMT can come up in breath work, in meditation. So I'm always going back to like my own power. And that wasn't always a thing. It's like, this is only in the last couple of years that I'm starting to become aware of that. So, but it can be still a useful tool in like I said, the overstimulation. Like, I would watch like YouTube videos while cooking, and I would be like, while I'm eating it, I'm also studying my astrology, you know? And like, I only realized that I was doing that and how scattered I was after ketamine.
Yeah. Because again, in tying back to that last question, it allows you to become aware of those networks. And so the reason of making mention of all the thoughts that we're having is because that's what's playing. So the prefrontal cortex is designed as the command center, but if the reptilian brain is running the show, just throwing these repetized, right? The reptilian, survival, ego, possessive, it's mine, judgmental, and those are the thoughts that are coming forward. then that's all we're focusing on. And so to deduce that, to take that offline temporarily, allows the brain that has so many potentials that we don't tap into ordinarily to come online. So it becomes opportunistic. And so now you're the observer from these new points of consciousness of those networks that have just been on replay.
And what's really great about ketamine is that neuroplasticity is durable, right? So what she's talking about is really kind of neuroplasticity, or able to reprocess and rewire. So and I think with you, like people who engage in mindful practices, whether it be meditation, yoga, whatever, like after ketamine, you really see the benefit because they're engaging what we call antidepressive behaviors, right? Which is really important when you're doing ketamine to actually get those benefits over time.
And they do support each other. I did notice that.
Yeah.
Like I did my last session with you, and then a few days later flew to Tennessee for this week-long yoga retreat. And I did notice that I was like able to drop in deeper, I think, and quicker because I had just come back from that place.
Right.
Yeah. So it does support each other.
For sure. I love meditation. But it's also like, how do you get there ordinarily, right? For some, they can't sit still for more than 5 minutes. So to create a space where you have that transcendental timeout, or a place where you can take a deeper dive for 45 minutes to an hour and cultivate new ways of thinking around that default mode network, that's where this medicine becomes opportunistic. But then again, now what are you doing with that information? So I can see that I'm the problem, but I can also see that I can solve it. But now I have to actually go take action. That's the variable for everyone, right? I mean, that's the journey that we're all on. If I can witness my behaviors, I know I'm the problem, but I'm also the solution. What do I do with that information?
Right.
And so people always ask, like, do I need to be in therapy when I'm doing ketamine? Like, how does that all play out? And, you don't. And in fact, talk therapy is really not great, right? Because we can logically analyze everything. But the great thing about ketamine is that you're actually tapping into that trauma loop, which that's why, like, you could be in therapy for 20 years and never be able to tap into actually the neurochemistry of what's going on.
Yeah.
That trauma loop where all of our traumas are stored and just, like Christy said, replaying in the background all day, every day, and then driving the subconscious. And then that leads to conscious behavior, and you're not even aware of why you're attracting things into your life or acting a certain way, but it's all pre-programmed in the limbic system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a lot of clients who, and you've seen how I work and do energy work, but
Yeah.
I'll get strict to I'm like, you have depression and abandonment from age 6. What happened? And they're like, that's when my parents got divorced,
Yeah.
It's like things like that. And then we just clear it right then and there. But I tell people all the time, like, therapy is fine for like what you brought up earlier. If at 5 p.m. this happens, like, it'll give you tools to like, okay, when you notice that happening, do this, breathe this, realize. But it's not getting to the source and the root and clearing it.
Right.
It's just like showing you how to live with it and
Right.
recognize it.
Because by definition, when you're triggered or whatever you call that, you're not in control of what's going on. So you can have the tools, but if you don't have the space and awareness to separate that loop out, then the tools you're learning in therapy aren't really going to work in that moment in time.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where it's really beneficial.
That makes sense. Yeah. How many have you guys done on yourself?
Well, she's done countless.
I can tell you're pretty you're like in a meditative state now.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Well, I really do work on that. Yeah. I put myself through the series of 6 back last year to see if it was obtainable, right? I'm like, what I'm asking of people, is that truly obtainable? Not in the sense of like once every 10 days. And am I getting a ride here? You know what I mean? There's a lot of variables in there. And I have 2 kids, and I was like, is this doable for a mom?
You wanted to see.
Yeah. And and then in the middle of it, I'll back up. What it taught me was flexibility in the scheduling, because it truly is the awarenesses you're taking from it, not necessarily the consistency in it. Now, if we're picking you up out of a really depressive network, then sometimes twice a week is really important just to get you up and out so that you have room to breathe, especially if suicidal ideations are really prevalent, versus we're tapping in to enhance our awareness, to deduce anxiety or whatever it may be. How do you integrate it? And especially if you experience something like ego death or you're witnessing yourself die in other dimensionalities, how do you now sit and truly allow that to be a concept before you take a deeper dive in it?
Right now, all around me, there are the frequencies of abundance and inner peace. You can have that and more. So take a second and let me tell you about Quantum Upgrade. Let's talk about like the Quantum Upgrade dashboard so people can see sort of how it works.
We use a very complicated, sophisticated system, which is, as far as we know, the most powerful source out there for quantum energy on Earth. You can pick from like, I think 26, 28 different frequencies now that we have. Inner peace, which you could leverage at night, for example. A lot of people do that. We have the Olympic performance. We have even something like weight management. We have the abundance prosperity. The service actually starts like within 5 minutes, the energy you will notice it starts ramping up. In the dashboard, you can select the Hawkins level for the day and pick between a level from 500 to I think like 1,200 or something like that. Just start low, go on 600 because it's not about faster, stronger, more powerful. Best is what feels good to you.
Like men's booster, women's booster, inflammation support, testosterone booster.
It's activating that testosterone actually can increase again. And 5 of these studies, and it showed in 46% to 100% acceleration in wound healing. But we do have a free trial that we want to offer all your listeners. So code frankly, you get 15-day free trial.
Do you feel like when it's on ketamine that's, how do I even describe this? Okay, like for me, it's not very visual. It's more just like downloads and information and like, oh, got it, right? Sometimes there's some visual, but it's not a lot. How would you describe that if somebody saw something like that? Is that, and I'm asking based on the viewer.
For sure.
They're going to ask like, is that real or
Right.
I feel like I know, but I still want to ask from the viewer's perspective.
Yeah. Well, it's I'll back up. We are interdimensional. And so once you can see the dimensionality that this medicine allows access to, there's versions of us that we've created in, I don't know how many versions of myself have existed. There's a version of 20-year-old me. There's a version of 2-year-old me. And we develop on top of that, right?
So you don't even mean past lives. You mean you as Christy.
Oh, yeah, in this current space and time. And so for some, they do go past life. That's more heavier doses with psilocybin. But for ketamine, there's these versions of ourselves that have been created with false narratives or just self-impositions. And then there's also the exposure, which I think pertains especially to those on front lines who are witnessing death over and over, because energy is not created nor destroyed, it just changes form. And so it can attach to us, right? And so is what I'm feeling mine, or is it something that energy is now attached to me? And when you're able to come out of that reptilian brain into a higher state of awareness as the observer, no longer as the participant, the versions of you that are ready to fall off or that are causing torment or worry in another dimension, you'll witness them die. And for some, they visually will see death, sometimes what they've been conjuring as their worst fears. Because we're also very good at conjuring, right? And so they'll see it, or they'll just have a knowingness, or they'll come out and be like, I think I just died. And you're like, so we
can have physiologic reactions.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, we should talk about that, because remember when I told you I was shaking? Oh, we should talk about this.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I brought that up.
Well,
Yeah.
you had a bunch of like cellular upgrades during.
So that's what you call it, cellular
Yeah.
upgrade, right? Which I'm
Yeah.
sure is a thing, and we'll talk about that. Because like on IO, I've heard of that too, and other things. But so I I thought at one point that you put me on a chair that was vibrating,
Right?
or that I was like, I mean, my spine was very kundalini. It was just like you know,
Oh,
I was
yes.
like this, and I was going like this, and then when I came out of it, I was like, were you like concerned at all when I was doing that?
You're probably one of the most still people I've ever met. Like, it's like no movement at all.
That's what he said. I just imagined
Yeah.
full, like my whole body vibrating like
Yeah.
this. I thought I was on a ride. So
Yeah.
what is that?
That's serpent energy. It's our truest, our natural
I'm wearing
form.
two serpent rings.
I love that
But, you know,
so
like that's,
much.
you know, in my kundalini practice, yes, but how is that in
Cerebral spinal fluid. We are piezoelectric. And this is where I love it so much. And to sit next to cardiology, right? Or just the vascular side of his intelligence. We are electromagnetic. You can see it when you put 3 leads or 4 leads onto our hearts. You can see it in our brain. But
So
when
what does that mean for somebody just watching who like needs basic? Does that mean we're electrical beings?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, all the impulses in our heart is electrical. All the impulses in our brain are highly electrical. So we are a lot of electrical energy.
And cerebral spinal fluid's the lubricant, which is the spine, which is a part of the causality of all of it, which lubricates everything in our body.
What does the spine?
Well, cerebral spinal fluid,
Yeah.
right? And the spine is the command center.
Yeah,
It is the receiver
So
and
if
the
I'm in ketamine
perceiver.
and my spine is doing this, and I feel like I'm, the serpent energy, like you described.
Mhm.
You said cellular upgrade. What is happening?
Well,
Well, it's based off your belief systems, right? Because truly what we're witnessing as the observer is you experiencing activations electrically with light and information. You are now tapping into the field of infinite consciousness.
Yeah, I can get that. I like that. Okay. I
Think
get that.
that's
Because
wonderful.
also, like, I think sometimes I'll have like somebody will talk about a subject I know nothing about, or like we see even on a bigger level, like big gurus doing this, where they're like, I've never read the Bhagavad Gita, but blah blah blah. And they just give you the answer. They're
Yeah.
like, because it comes from, I don't know how I know. I just know.
It's
You
an
know,
unlimited
it's like
field
that,
of
right?
information. Well, it's the quantum realm, right?
Yeah.
And so what we've known historically is Newtonium is very linear and very local. A plus B equals C. This is not
That's like
true
cause and effect.
in dimensionality. Yes, also untrue, right? Or the duality, right? It just is. And so when you are able to unfold as an awareness, as consciousness, you're then able to access an unlimited field of information that then gets downloaded into your nervous system.
there's a lot of energy that goes on with that.
Yes.
And I have heard, oh yeah, you're right, like preparing your spine too. That's why certain yoga practices are so important, because they prepare you. Like a lot of people get annoyed, they have to do the basic stuff first before they can do this. And it's like, yeah, but they're preparing your spine, because that's a lot of information.
Oh, yeah.
You know? But what about if somebody's like, I don't know, having some kind of reaction and they're confused? Like they come out of it and they're like, do you tell them to like process, take a week? Like what would you tell somebody?
Usually, well, are you talking about a physiologic reaction? We have
Or either like
protocols
something
around that,
like a
but-
lot of things to contemplate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
That
it
was a
just
lot.
takes time,
Okay.
And I usually tell them to engage in self-care practices, especially within the first 24 hours.
Yeah.
We had one girl, and I think you were there,
Yeah.
when she did ketamine, and she came out, and her significant other like started getting into her about like her shoes. She wasn't wearing the right shoes, like right after her ketamine session, right? And that's not what you want to be doing
Right.
after ketamine. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's really important to just take care of yourself, go home, meditate, relax, take a bath, that kind of stuff.
And you don't know what you want, right? So we set intentions. Intentions allow us to pay attention. Like I know if I asked you right now what you want, you could probably answer that. But to a majority, as soon as you say, what do you want? They're like, And so the intention allows you to pay attention. And that in itself already starts you thinking and contemplating. And then the whole act of it is no tension. It's the act of surrender. And so it's this continuum.
Yeah, I always tell people, and I think I told you that when you enter, don't have an intention. You don't need an intention.
Be told my friend that. Yeah. And I remember
just let
that.
it,
Yeah.
let the medicine work.
Yeah.
And you just kind of, like she said, surrender to the medicine. And I think that's where some people get into problems with ketamine. People who aren't ready for ketamine, they're unable to do that. And so I've had a few people that have done it that don't ever want to do it again. because they're confronted with that consciousness. They're confronted with dealing with some of the stuff that becomes aware, and they're not ready for it.
Right, which is most, they're still in blame, right? And so if you think about a lot of our angst and worry, it's because my energy is spent out here. So somebody cuts me off in traffic. Now that's the reason why I'm grumpy. If this isn't done, all of my energy is outwardly and not inwardly. And so I can have a lot of causality, right? You're the cause of my suffering. This is because of this. This is because of this. So now I'm out here. And if you've been out there for a long time, the minute you go in here and you realize that it's only been you and you're the common denominator in all of your story, that can be uncomfortable developmentally if you're not ready yet to sit in that. And so,
good. It's so true.
oh, it's so true.
In one of the Kriya practices I do every day is from Sadhguru, and I was initiated in that. And one of the reminders, there's like 4 reminders or 5 in the morning that you do before your practice, and one of them is I'm responsible for everything in my life.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh,
And all the rules are my rules.
Right.
And
yes.
then like all these rules that you created
Yes.
are all your own rules.
Right.
You created those rules. They're not really there.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know? Can we give someone an example of that? It's like, what would a rule be? Like
They were supposed to suffer.
Yeah.
we're supposed to suffer.
That's gotta be hard.
Or it's not okay to ask for this.
Yeah.
You created that rule. That's not a real rule.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that just goes back to boundaries and everything else. Right.
Yeah. But I mean, it's so much deeper than even boundaries, because it's like, it's everything. Like all
Oh,
the
yeah.
rules that are shaping our lives, we just created them, or we learned them and created them to be true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like being aware of that accountability, like Christy said, it can be very uncomfortable for people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how did you two connect? Like what made this?
The universe.
Right. Yeah.
Well, interestingly, I'm pretty sure I used to fly trauma patients to him probably 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And we used to work at the same. I flew in the helicopters. It depends on the pilot. They would let you occasionally touch but otherwise no. And then it was until I pivoted in the sense, and when I first started building flow, which is the name of the practice, I built the clinic. And then to take the intelligence. But inside of that, I was forming all of that from inside of an organization. That organization, I set an intention to be able to empower doctors to be able to work with this medicine. And so he literally was the first presentation of holding that as the mission of how do you empower doctors who are regenerative, who are functional, so that they can truly impact the consciousness. Because we can help people, but if there's still, I think there's a proverb around it, right? Like you can eat all the kale, you can do all the things, but if your mind is still in suffering, then all of it's going to waste essentially. And so how do you allow doctors to impact consciousness to help them truly make an impact of the medicine that they're working with?
But we met through a mutual friend.
Yeah.
Colleague.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you guys, if you also like, so somebody wants to come in and have a session, that's one thing, but you're also, which I think is really cool, getting other clinics set up, right?
Yeah.
All over the country.
We're
Somebody's
actually
watching
flying
this.
out to Virginia in 2 weeks to set up a clinic out there.
Wow.
So we're trying to get this, and her model, Christy's model, what she's designed over time that supplies all the infrastructure around ketamine and how it should be practiced, right? Because a lot of these ketamine clinics that you can go to, it's like, come in and get your ketamine.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see the way you do it is so intentional, and it's a perfect linking because also the way you do regenerative medicine is so intentional. I've seen your stuff. I mean, my friend Andrea went and did your. She worked with you the other day, and we were talking about your red light bed and how we're like, it's like nicer than like the best places in LA.
Right.
I mean, you really take the time to think of like.
Yeah, I mean, we try to be very particular on what we employ in my clinic and keep it very as scientific as we can and what's out there, because, you know, there is a lot out there that can be not as useful as marketed. And so,
You've got like sound therapy.
Yeah.
Oh, really incredible.
Yeah. So I guess my point is like, that's why I really wanted to partner with Christy, because that's how I like to do things. And she did it right. And so that's what we're trying to, that message is what we're trying to bring out to the rest of the people that want to do ketamine.
So if somebody's watching now and they own a clinic or they're interested in opening one, what is it? Like what kind of, does it already have to be medically licensed? What are the things and what do you come in and do?
For sure. Well, the medical licensure is important, but again, it's based off of states. So some of the mid-levels or nurse practitioners, PAs, naturopaths, there's an empowerment piece for a lot of the healthcare industry, just because it's an adaptive model, which is nonlinear and non-local. But like for Jason, for example, he's totally an anomaly because he's so brilliant as a vascular surgeon and his ability to start IVs. You talk to a majority of doctors, they haven't touched like actual skills for a long time. And so he's very self-sufficient in his practice.
Nurses doing it.
Yeah, or whomever.
And you do need to be trained on handling patients that are in an altered state of consciousness, because there are things that can happen during the session that you need. It's rare, but you need to be prepared for it. So
Yeah.
when we're setting up clinics, we do it in a way that there's a curriculum. We take them through the basics all the way up to emergency protocols and all the indications and, the follow-up, everything, the mental health side of it.
Dosing.
Oh, yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the parameters, because there's cognitive strongholds. I mean, you would think for some who needed a large dose are actually the ones who need the smallest dose, especially when you're working with like some tier 1 and special forces, guys that know how many cars are in the parking lot. You don't want to separate them from their physical body so profoundly or so quickly in the beginning. It convolutes the process and the medicine. So you're building trust. And not only that, you're also learning the medicine. And so how do you find these dosing structures? And that's one of the benefits is that we created the parameters.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
How can people find you too? And for that specifically.
Flowintegrative.org is our organization website to be able to really be impacted by the medicine and the protocol. And then for me, my space down in Encinitas is flowintegrative.ketamine.com to work with the medicine. And then Jason's a little north. So
I'm in Ranchos at Viva Life Healing Center. So
Yeah. Viva.
www.viva.life.
Cool. I'll put both of those.
Yeah.
yeah, thank
I haven't
you.
been to your place yet, but I've been to Dr. Jason's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just put red light in as well too. It's
Oh, you did?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Is it the same
She
one?
has the same
Yeah.
same
It's
company.
so
I don't know
good.
if it's the same.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Yeah.
Such a strong bed.
Ah.
Oh, and by the way, after my last session, it was like the strongest of all of them, where I was really like, oh my God, oh no, not the second, not the last, but the second.
Second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I went and laid in that red light bed for 12 minutes and I was like, okay, ready to go.
Yes.
Go. Like, it was just
Yes.
it was so good together.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then I was like ready to implement all the things that I had picked up from the session,
Yes.
I was like, oh yeah, write that down.
Yeah. Yeah. You had a really good experience.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
There was like one thing, and maybe this is the intentional thing that I came in with that didn't get. It was like a physical thing, right?
Yeah.
Like hypertension, hyperhidrosis. As you can see, like I'm totally fine now. Not one part of my body is sweating, but like for some reason, out of random, the reason why it gets problematic is that it only happens when I'm doing like yoga, meditation, getting massage, like very things that you would think that that's not where it happens because you're relaxed. So I know it's not anxiety because it's when I'm in the most relaxed state, or if I do yoga with like socks on just in case. And so I went in with that intention thinking maybe there's like something that needs to get calmed down. It gave me awareness of it. Like there's certain fabrics I can't touch. Like I cannot touch. It would just bother me. Like, oh, I can't touch that fabric. And you gave me a blanket that was that fabric and it was on me in the session. And I remember I caught myself in the middle of the session going like this, like rubbing the fabric. That didn't sound like a big deal. I cannot touch that fabric normally. And I was literally just like rubbing it, like caressing it.
Yeah.
Look, it's fine. Everything is great.
Yeah.
It actually feels kind of nice. Like, so there, it did help in some, because normally that would have, because it bothers me, my palms might start sweating or something would happen. It didn't happen. But as far as like day to day, anyway, but I think I'm getting the answers. It led me to a place of clarity to where I can find the answers. So now I'm doing this high dose ozone because I'm thinking, well, what if there's like heavy metals or parasites or something that my body's trying to expel? So
There's a good chance.
yeah.
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 Yes.
right?
Yeah.
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 So now I'm doing that as well.
Yeah, and that that also is, kind of raises the whole concept around foundational health around the ketamine too, right? So intestinal health and everything else that goes on with nutrition and just getting that optimized system, whole system, not just your mental health.
Right. So like ketamine is like a piece of it.
Yeah, but ketamine, most of our physiology starts in our brain, right, or in our gut. They go back and forth. So if you get the brain and the gut right, then your foundational health automatically should be a lot better.
And I get this should have been like my first question, but what is actually happening in the brain? I know what's happening is experientially, but what's actually happening?
Yeah,
Like ayahuasca, for example, is affecting the amygdala. It opens the floodgate of emotions. What is this doing?
so it actually inhibits the inhibitory neurons on the glutamate receptor. So you get a rapid firing on a neural level. That's really what it does.
Okay, but for like the basic.
Right.
Like, what
It separates the limbic system. Well, it doesn't separate it. It's a non-competitive
limbic
antagonist.
system? Survival?
The limbic system is just a network that we categorize that houses the amygdala, the hippocampus, and just a series of other networks. It's truly the animal brain as it comes in to the cortex. And so as it's working here where the limbic engages, where we would then perceive all of the animal behavior. So that's why it becomes so opportunistic for the brain to truly come out of hurry and worry and survival. And as that's happening, it allows the inhibitory side to start to populate. Otherwise, the default mode network is just fully engorged and just running the show. So as you slowly pull that network out of influence, the inhibitory side starts to populate, and it populates from happiness, the serotonic region of the brain. And so now you truly are cultivating new neural circuitry that is coming directly from happiness, as where we are designed to make it in the brain and as it pertains to the gut.
And how many sessions are ballpark for that to be your stake? Like, okay, I'm now operating from a different place,
I mean, the research is all around 6 sessions,
which is what I did.
Yeah.
but it can be very variable depending on what you're treating. Like it may take 6 sessions just to get you to 0,
Yeah.
depending on where you are.
To give you 0 as in like.
So we kind of got to meet the patient where they are,
Yeah.
Yeah.
make a decision.
Borderline personality disorder is one of those.
We're at 6 to get to 0.
6 to get to 0.
Severe obsessive-compulsive disorder.
And then from there, you start to build it back up.
Yeah, because if you can imagine like the thresholds, if you're really down deep into that default mode network, you're climbing up and out to almost like a 0 point. And then that 0 point, you start making progress forward. And for some, one session, you're witnessing, or at least I've seen, up to 5 ego deaths in one session.
Oh, so so many personalities.
Oh, well, not just necessarily the personalities, but all of the different, behaviors that they've established and false narratives based off their trauma, right? I mean, if we look at the core, the causality of what the diagnosis is, and it stems back, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, this happened in childhood, so I developed this as a behavior. So now how are you undoing that rather than just trying to fix or correct the behavior?
It's really reprogramming.
Yeah,
Like
reprogram.
there's this program that's created.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a back.
But you're changing the program.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And personality disorders in general are thought to be extremely difficult to treat. Almost some people say impossible, although I'm not really convinced that's true. But the ketamine around the personality, particular borderline, has been pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So what about, and we'll just end it with like, well, maybe one more thing after this. We're not ending it on a sad note, but like fears that people are like, oh, well, I heard so-and-so
Oh, totally.
died from this. Like, what do you say to those people?
1,300 people a day die from fatness.
Fatness?
Yep. And nobody's running around like, oh, there's a fat guy, or oh, there's like, it's really astonishing to me what we place our energy on. Well, rule number 1 is don't do ketamine in bodies of water.
Right, because you just get
Like that should just be a known. But again, ketamine is not tied to any type of overdoses on its own. it's always a polydrug use, which is usually alcohol and some sort of nervous depressant, and then that becomes a catalyst. And so ketamine is so safe. Truly, it's primarily used for kids in the emergency room. Kids
Yeah, I
do
did
the
not know
best
that.
with
It's so
it.
wild to
Yeah,
think about.
and it's so quick on, quick off.
Mhm.
It's actually
Yeah.
a really safe drug when it's used properly. It's the stigma that's come from recreational use
Yeah,
Right.
really been the problem. But that's the problem with a lot of things.
I know.
Even fentanyl. Fentanyl we use in the hospital. We use it very safely all the time. It's the recreational use that's the problem.
And think about how much booze kills people, and yet people have beer in their fridge and don't even think twice about it. Like they don't open it and go, ah, this kills thousands of people a day. Oh, right? Yeah.
Right? With that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So generally safe.
It's so safe.
Yeah. Especially the way you two are doing it and the way you
It's-
train people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And IV allows you to be able to shut it off, which is also really important.
Oh, true. Because once you've taken the loss, it,
You're
Yeah,
there.
so like, our infusion runs out about, at 40 minutes, and people are back in their body doing well at 55 minutes.
Yeah.
60 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Any last thoughts?
I know. I really appreciate having conversation.
Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
beautiful. I'm glad we did it.
Yeah.
I'm
Me
glad
too.
You decided to do it.
Yeah. Me too. I mean, I feel good. Like I feel really good.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. I know I texted like you, I think after third one, and I'm like, I get it. Like we really drop in after the third.
It's more in the core. Like the third and fourth, yeah, for sure. Well, you're building on each new neurogenesis or each new experience, right? So it's about 10 days, it becomes opportunistic, right? But now you're meeting and exceeding. So each time you are not only engorging more of the mind, but now you're also able to drop in because you're more familiar with the medicine. So that act of surrender and letting go. Yep. Because you're safe in the process, right? It's and part of that too. And people's worry is due diligence, right? I mean, you should definitely be asking questions or not just blindly trusting, because there are some providers that are also mishandling this medicine.
Because there is like the tendency, if you see the place is called ketamine, so you're like, okay, they probably do this every day.
Right.
You know?
I mean, I can't speak to that clinic.
Well, I'm not even thinking of one in general. I'm just saying like a place that says like ketamine clinic or something.
Right.
They're popping up all over the place
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, I work with an anesthesiologist at the hospital. He came up to me and was like, hey, man, I'm starting a ketamine clinic. I was like, really? I'm like, do you know anything about
Did he know that you do that?
No, he didn't actually. That was the funny part. So, and I started telling him about what we're doing, and he's like, well, I had no idea, this and that. He's like, I just want a side hustle, pretty much, is what he was saying to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense.
Which is disturbing.
I mean, I would trust
sure.
an anesthesiologist because they're like, they probably know all these things, but
Yeah.
you're right. Like to be able to, like that's the intent. If that's the intention behind it, that's
Yeah.
a little disturbing. Yeah.
For sure. It's a cash grab.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you guys are amazing. I'll make sure to link everything
you.
below because I think I like the idea of people coming to you for the individual service, but really like to open up clinics. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you know that it's a safe place to go because it'll be powered by flow, which is, it's nice because then you see that there is trust in that, or at least there's been training behind it.
Oh, so the place will have powered by flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they'll have ongoing support, after implementation. So, and the goal is really to create a community around this.
Yeah. Especially for the mysticism that is this medicine. I mean, the cellular upgrade side of it, to be able to language to that or to be able to call upon, because to work with the medicine so intimately gives you a lot of inner awareness into not just, you're sharing consciousness.
It's a good point because if you're with some random technician or a doctor or someone that's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Right? Or dismissive.
Doesn't know what it is.
Mhm.
You're right. That is a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then you're like trying to figure it out and Googling it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It could be harmful in itself. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for introducing me to do it,
Yeah.
getting me to do it and
Yeah.
experience it. I think it's like a good one time a year thing now. Like maintenance.
For sure. Well, we can feel like, I know I can feel when I need
Yeah.
space, right?
We were just talking last night. I'm like, man, I can really tell. When the maintenance
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Like you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to become dependent. It's
No.
not even that. It's just more like, oh, I can see in like a few months when I'm really in it to just take that step back,
Right.
catch those patterns.
For sure. We move so quickly through space and time, right? We're literally moving 18 miles per second. And so, especially when you carry a heavy load, right? And with kids and everything else, we literally put ourselves back into survival just in our thought alone. And so that's when that mechanism, again, the animal brain's like, gotcha. And so how, until we ascend from this, which I truly do believe psilocybin is one of those factors into how we transcend the reptilian brain to where we do become just light and information.
Yeah, we'll be incorporating those as they come down.
Yeah.
Oh, really? As they become
If they can become more available, incorporate those into protocols as maintenance therapy and adjunct therapy.
Yeah.
I think it's like a really good bullet train to the finish line, but to get a glimpse of it. And then, you know, but that's why I love, like what I was saying earlier with the meditation, it takes me back to that, is like, it does all the things you described of like becoming the observer, doing all these things. And I get not everyone's I wake up 3 hours before I need to every day just to make sure that I get my yoga and meditation, everything in. So probably not everyone's going to do that.
Right.
Like if I have to, my first things, let's say at 10 a.m., I'll be up at like 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. Like I make sure I, you know.
Yes.
But yeah, it is like a good tool though to like keep you there, kind of like in this day-to-day thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if you're going to do that work. If you're not,
Right.
at least you can do this medicine and know, like get a glimpse of what's beyond the veil.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. I'm trying to be just more balanced because like I used to be the type that would like making videos always like everyone needs to do ayahuasca, everyone needs to do mushroom. And then I realized like, okay, just like take a step back. Not everybody needs to. When you're ready, you do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to, you know, pressure anybody. And also like now I'm more in my power where I'm like, well, there are ways to raise DMT in the body if you need to. There are ways to connect with oneness and all that, you know. It's a lot harder and it takes a lot more work, but if that's really what you want, there are other ways too.
Totally.
Yeah. But if somebody's just like, look, like you said, I'm a mom or I'm a dad and I'm busy and I like, this gives you that hour to just,
Yeah.
and there's nothing like that feeling. Like I remember when you put the IV, you know, whatever's fine, I'm sitting there, but then as soon as the music starts, and I always know it's like that second or third song, I'm like, I'm about to drop it. There's like a moment where it's like, okay, I'm going there, you know? It's a nice feeling.
It's beautiful. Yeah. I love the way you language. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
For sure. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Believe that you really choose it. Ever since I wrote my goals down with the pen, my dreams and reality have both been blending in. I just hope that in the end, my debt don't extend me, I'm a dividend.